What I want women to really feel empowered to do is to understand that your journey is your journey. Your needs are your needs, your
Mhm.
interests, your interests. And if you want to find a natural solution, do your research and find a natural solution. And I wouldn't just say evidence based, but that has the data to support it. Some of the natural solutions out there are using some of the usual suspects, like the black cohosh. So people need to be aware of these things and find, I want to say, a brand or find a person that is knowledgeable, that can really guide you away from inertia to do something, because doing nothing is not an option. They have to do something. And that's one of my concerns, that by women doing nothing, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, they're going to have some serious chronic diseases that is going to impact their lives in ways that they haven't imagined.
That was an amazing quote from my next guest, Dr. Michelle Cromwell. And in this episode, we are spilling the tea, literally and figuratively. Dr. Michelle Cromwell has a journey to share with us, and a secret to leaving a corporate job, a high-paying, successful corporate job in which she held a very high position. She will share the secret on how a woman comes to this place in her life to follow her soul path, her journey, her purpose, and to step into something that is bolder than what a position or a salary could ever offer. And if you're in the midlife transition where you're contemplating whether you should step into something bold and brave, you have to listen to Dr. Michelle's story. Her company is called Sœur du Sol, Sisters of the Soil. You will learn so much more about this and just why exactly did Dr. Michelle leave an 18-year career holding a C-suite executive position to blend teas and other herbal remedies. She will share that too, as well as why we need women empowered and supported in their menopause experience, particularly women who are in leadership roles or still in the workplace. And let's face it, many career women will experience menopause because perimenopause begins anywhere as early as 35, and you can experience menopause symptoms well into your 60s. Dr. Michelle is a woman on a mission. Her motto is to blend the science with the spirit, take conventional wisdom with ancient West African wisdom, combine it, and deliver a modern-day woman's approach to addressing menopause symptoms that does take into consideration the whole person that we are, body, mind, and spirit. But before we begin, here's something you need to know about Dr. Michelle Cromwell. Dr. Michelle hails from Chandler, Arizona, and as I mentioned, transitioned out of an 18-year career in higher education to create her business, and she now serves as a high-performance and well-being strategist for women in their boss babe phase. Oh, love that. Among some of the many ventures that her business is up to, she's creating Pourceur, a tea, and a wearable patch with a time-released West African herb for high-achieving women experiencing mental fog with menopause. Not only that, she has partnered with a group of herbalists, traditional healers, and university researchers from West Africa to use powerful herbal remedies to help boost well-being and peak performance. Dr. Michelle holds a PhD in conflict analysis and resolution from Nova Southeastern University in Florida with a specialty in ethnic conflict. And believe it or not, there is a role to play when working with women and the workplaces for menopause education and hormonal health support. Her website is sœurdusol.com, and you can find her on LinkedIn as well as on Instagram at the Dr. Michelle. All those links will be in the show notes. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Michelle to the Menopause Disruptor podcast. Welcome, Dr. Michelle from Chandler, Arizona.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is going to be an interesting topic because you use a mantra or a phrase that I have often used before. Yours is where science and spirit intersect, and I've often said that managing menopause or transitioning through menopause is where science and spirituality intersect. So I feel we're on common ground. I'm equally drawn to another common ground, and that is that you worked in a corporate environment for several years, as did I. But you made a huge transition after 18-year career in higher education, most recently with a C-suite executive position, to founding your company, Sœur du Sol. What inspired you to take this big leap?
So I love that you entered with the intersection of science and spirit. So in at the end of 2022, I was dabbling with a course on cosmic herbalism. So have been interested in herbalism. My father was an engineer and he also was an herbalist. So always had this interest. And one of my favorite teachers, Adriana Ayales from the Anima Mundi brand, was doing this course. So I jumped into the course with her and she was teaching us about medical astrology. And one evening, everybody in the course was commenting on my natal chart. And I thought, oh, sugar, honey, iced tea, what is happening? So the next day, when we met as a class, she asked me what I did. And she said, are you in the healing arts? And I said, no, I'm a vice president at a university. And she said, oh, interesting. I hope you can swim. And I think what she was saying to me is that there was an ocean that I needed to jump into that I had not intentionally explored. So at the beginning of 2023, without a parachute, I decided to leave my job. And what was interesting is even though I'm not an astrologer, I use medical astrology, which is what a lot of physicians use. And I'm not a physician, I'm a PhD that practices traditional medicine. But before there was medicine and drugs, that's what they used, the natal charts. So understanding that my natal chart was telling me something, and I knew I had to make that leap. So I made the leap, and the rest is history. Because if I can say that at my sacred center, I've always been a healer. I've just been running and doing everybody else's bidding, which was being on that track to probably one day be a university president, and I would have been empty. I might have been successful, right, by worldly standards, but I think I would have been empty. So that's where the change came from, and it was a whirlwind of a change. And you're muted, so I'm missing the magic.
I always do that. And like you said, you were running, you were chasing something in the world, the worldly standards of position, power, prestige, and missing out on what our soul calling, our soul purpose is. But what drew you to take this herbal medicine course in the first place?
I love that you asked that. So I had been an incognito healer. So while I was a professor, so I was a professor for 11 years, got tenure, moved into the C-suite, I had been practicing complementary medicine. So I started off as a yoga teacher, I believe in maybe 2006, and
Okay.
added a suite of complementary practices almost
Okay.
every year. So Reiki, became a Reiki master teacher, actually trained people to do Reiki.
Oh,
And so I've always had that the complementary and alternative, although somebody told me I shouldn't say complementary and alternative. I've always been doing that traditional medicine. And my father, like I said, he was an herbalist, he was an engineer, but I grew up around herbs. So I always had this deep interest in it and respected Adriana Ayales. And when she offered that course, I thought, wow, this is a way that I can add science and spirit, right? The medical astrology to understand how years ago those physicians used the natal chart to really understand how they treated their patients using the planetary characteristics and the constellations, not as, forgive me for anybody that loves the psychological astrology. I don't even know the psychological astrology, which is what we call the woo astrology. I just don't know it, but I know the medical astrology because there's something that feels very scientific about it. So I can make sense with the angles and so I had that hidden part of my life that I think Adriana was telling me I had to move from behind the veil.
oh,
And that if I didn't do it, that I would drown, and I would drown in the worst way. And at my sacred center, I knew that it wasn't a calling. It was something that I had to do. So a lot of my mentors, my sponsors, my colleagues, they all thought that I had lost my God-loving mind.
Yeah. It's
It's like you leave your good paying job to go do what? Your what?
Give our listeners a little sample of what natal charts, reading natal charts, and herbal or medical astrology, I should say, is all about. I would say this is a perfect time to break for a word from our sponsors. Guess what? You, my listeners, are my sponsors. That's right. I would love it if you could support the show. Helping me will help bring these amazing episodes to you each and every week, just packed full of information to help you on your menopause journey. And to support the show, all you have to do is go into the show notes and click just above where you read Meet Your Host. In green is Support the Show. You click on the button and it'll bring you to a page where you have the option to donate monthly, 3, 5, 8, 10. You can be a loyal supporter for as long as you want with recurring fee as little as $3 a month and opt out at any time. Each investment goes directly back into producing episodes with even better content, improved audio quality, and will go a long way in bringing great guests onto the show.
Yeah, so even though that's not the main work that I do, it still is in the department of being a sister of the soil. So when we look at our natal charts are like our fingerprint. Everybody's chart is different. And depending on where you're born, right, the geography, latitude and longitude, depending on the time that you're born, there are spots on your chart which speak to planetary characteristics. So,
Mhm.
for instance, there are planets such as Mars, Saturn, and the Sun, which we call the malefics. So, depending on where those planets are, they have a specific characteristic. So, Mars is hot. So, heat has to do with inflammation, something that's acute. And Saturn is very cold and restrictive. So we're talking about a chronic, something that's less inflammatory. So the planets actually speak to the energetic characteristics, whereas the constellations, or what people will call the signs, speak to the corresponding body parts. So
Okay.
if I can give a good example, because my Mars is in Virgo. Virgo rules the digestive system and the stomach.
Okay.
If I had known that 10 years ago, I would have understood that I would have had some serious inflammatory issues that would have turned into something else, and that I could have treated it in a certain way. So when my doctors saw me becoming violently allergic to foods that I had eaten for years, they couldn't pay attention or didn't understand that they had to pay attention to the stomach. But medical astrology helped me to understand that. So now, in doing my own healing, I pay attention to my stomach. I pay attention to what I eat, when I eat, how I eat, because I know based on my fingerprint, right? Based on my fingerprint, that I have a propensity to the heat, to the quickness, to the inflammation in that area. And there's so much more that I came to understand because of medical astrology. And because of that, I'm able to head some things off, or even when they happen, to treat them in a certain way for myself.
This is quite fascinating. I never heard how our natal chart can almost predict our predisposition to wellness, to illness, to certain diseases. Never ever imagined that. But when you,
Absolutely.
so are you reading women's natal charts, for example, in your work, or are you now just focusing on West African herbs? And I want to get into that quite extensively.
I love that you asked that question because I think it's a both and, right?
Okay.
So I want to look at the whole person. So as we do, and I know that I can't talk about diagnosis and treatment, but as I help people to understand who they are and
Mhm.
what is happening, the natal chart is a place that we can do the assessment because it can help you to oh my God, it helps you to understand so many things. So we're talking, so we're going to talk. For years, I didn't understand where there was this bipolarity for the ways that people interacted with me. You either love me or hate me. And I couldn't understand that. And it's because of where a specific entity is on my birth chart. So when people see that, they either see, something that is alluring, or they might see something that makes them want to run for the hills.
That's incredible.
It really is. So for women, and I want to say, especially for corporate women, if
Yes.
we can understand that there is nothing. So when we say woo woo, for me, when people say woo woo, it means like, whoa, whoa, I don't understand this. But
Good point.
there is a way that this work can help us to understand what is coming at us and how we can be like the matrix and avoid it. Because some of my colleagues always said, I never understood how you could just move around conflict in a way that things just seem to fall off you like water off a duck's back. And I think it's a part of me being able to assess who
Okay.
I am, who people are. And that's all related to this work of planetary medicine, is related to the work of West African alchemy that I think we all should be introduced to, and not just Black women. And I say this because when we hear about Africa, there is the assumption that, well, this is just for Black women, right? And you're a Black woman with your accent and your locks and your cowrie shells and your hair. So this must just be for Black women. And I want to say that Africa is the source. It's the source. So we can all go back to that source and drink from that source. It's just,
Mm,
it's beautiful. It has changed my life. It has, it,
mm.
it has changed my life. And you know what? I understand that I needed to leave the corporate setting because I need to be the one that sounds the alarm, but I also need to be that leadership activator that helps to activate something in women that if they want to stay in those places, we welcome that because it's not like quit your job day, but they can stay in those spaces. But I think I'm the bridge that helps them to get to that whole sense of well-being with all these tools.
And you allude to that on your website that we know our own bodies best and that wisdom, whether it's ancient wisdom, but wisdom that's deeply rooted, the body knows. But our Western society and the Western culture has given our autonomy, our power away to an external source, our medical system, for example. And we are suddenly feel that we are no longer able to make those choices or tap in. And now that we're seeing a lot of the West African practices, the Eastern medicine practices trickle back into our society, women are now discovering at their disposal the answers to healing and wellness are all there. But I love how you say you are the bridge. And tell us now then, because that is one you mentioned it, conflict analysis. Was one of my questions for you is your background in conflict analysis. How has this helped shape the way you approach women's health, also women's leadership and well-being?
So having a background in conflict analysis and resolution has helped me to really, really understand that a lot of the things that women experience, especially those high achieving women that get into these very challenging roles, that there has to be an understanding that even when something is coming at you and it feels dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
opportunity in that, right? So the Chinese symbol of conflict is opportunity and danger. So I always see, even if something is dangerous, that there's some opportunity in it and make that your classroom.
Ah.
Because there's always something there to learn. So that's one of the things that I help women to understand. But I also want to say that having a PhD in that field, which is very multidisciplinary, it really helps me to see things from numerous angles. So I never take this unilateral focus or stance or perspective on anything, or even the people that I work with. I really am able to see things from multiple lenses. And because of that, you get so many more answers. So the outcome that you have is informed by not just one little thing, but so many things.
So give us an example, what some this conflict that women would be facing, for example, that they would run from danger or run to opportunity. What are they facing now in their menopause transition that would result in a conflict for which they have to start using your resolution tools, for example, your background now in Western herbal medicine?
Oh, I love that question. So, one of the biggest conflicts for midlife women is, do I use something that is informed and endorsed by conventional medicine based on everything that I've heard about this, everything that I've seen my aunt who had breast cancer, my grandmother who had all these issues, or do I follow my heart's desire and find something that's natural, which is what I want. And what
Mm,
and what I say, that conflict, I think, creates some intrapersonal conflict for women because it's almost like the inconvenient facts. So they know that there's something there that can help, and that's what, HRT is. But
mhm.
but there is this mistrust because of that study that was done in 1991. So they don't want to go down that road. But the challenge is because that conflict it causes a lot of dissonance. And for some women, that dissonance makes them stop. So they end up doing nothing,
Ah,
right? And that intrapersonal conflict is like it's churning and they don't know what to do. The doctors are not necessarily always giving them the answers that they want. So they end up doing nothing. And in their 60s, they end up breaking a bone and they can't understand why.
okay.
Or they get
Mm.
pushed out of their job, or people are not respecting them because they lose their thoughts during a high powered presentation for 7 seconds. And people are like, oh, you know what? Susie has lost her mojo. So, what I want women to really feel empowered to do is to understand that your journey is your journey. Your needs are your needs, your
Mhm.
interests, your interests. And if you want to find a natural solution, do your research and find a natural solution. And I wouldn't just say evidence based, but that has the data to support it. Some of the natural solutions out there are using some of the usual suspects, like the black cohosh. I saw a lot of them have things like licorice. Licorice actually increases the blood pressure. So people need to be aware of these things and find, I want to say, a brand or find a person that is knowledgeable, that can really guide you away from inertia to do something, because doing nothing is not an option. They have to do something. And that's one of my concerns, that by women doing nothing, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, they're going to have some serious chronic diseases that is going to impact their lives in ways that they haven't imagined.
Dr. Michelle, when you referred to the Women's Health Initiative, you were referring to a 22 study. Okay. Yeah. And now we're seeing something very similar when we have seen the hype and the reports out on black box warning labels, for example, on the use of vaginal estrogen. And not to go into that, but the same outcome seems to be happening. And as soon as there is these reports that garner media hype, that it puts women in a somewhat of an analysis paralysis, if you will, where they're just at a standstill. So they throw up their hands and say, well, that report just came out. Now this is wrong, that's wrong. Is that pretty much what we're seeing happen? It is impacting women?
It's interesting that you say that way because when I was a professor, I taught sociology. And one of the things as a fallen away sociology professor is that I understand that your culture and things that are like a norm for your values, those are some of the non-negotiables and do not change. So even though there's a lot of media hype, the FDA is going to remove the warning on the labels, that doesn't mean that Susie down the road is going to decide to go do that because ingrained in her schemata, on her brain is that this causes XYZ. So we have to do a lot more to either get women out of, like you said, right, that paralysis analysis,
Right.
or to or to empower them, which is what I feel my work is, to say, okay, 11% of menopausal women are using some of the conventional methods. What about the other 89%? What about all those women? So I want to empower those women, not to say you have to do either or, but to give them the information so that they can then be empowered to say, you know what? I think I'm going to go talk to my doctor about using XYZ. Or let me check into some of these West African herbs that you're talking about that probably can take me to source and help me at least do something and not do nothing. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yes, I'm really stuck on that data, the statistics. 11% of women are relying on conventional mechanisms, and the other 89% could be going any direction.
Exactly. And I'm the nerd, So I taught research methods for maybe about 8 years. And I'm always looking at the data to understand what story the data is telling. And that study did such a wallop on people wanting to use the conventional methods that I don't think women have recovered from the
Mm,
they have not recovered from the findings of that study. And we will have to do a lot more work than just the media hype, doing summits. There will be some movement, but that study has caused a lot of mistrust,
yes.
right, in certain methods. And I don't think that is going to change significantly in
Hmm.
in the next 5 to 10 years. I don't see it happening. So let's just say that figure moves to 40%. You still have all these other women not doing anything. And as I said, doing nothing is not an option. I was
Right.
speaking to a young woman at a networking event, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and she was telling me about her business, and I was telling her about Sœur du Sol. And she said, oh my God, I didn't think about this. My mother just broke part of her spine. And she
Oh,
said she did, nothing during her menopausal days. And I think her mother is like in her 60s. So we have to make those connections. And for me, as a fallen away researcher, I'm always making connections to bits of data and then inducing and or deducing what that actually means. I remember I had, oh my God, she was one of the most beautiful women that I have ever met. She was in the master's program with me before I went into my PhD. And she was having a lot of gum problems.
okay.
Maybe about a year after, she had a quadruple bypass.
Oh my goodness.
Now, when we make the connections, she was in her mid 40s. Mid 40s, what is happening around that time? Perimenopause.
Right.
One of the symptoms is the bleeding gums and the issues with the gums.
Never think of, take for granted.
Right, which leads to later some cardiac issues. And she now has a pacemaker and is a shadow of who she
Mm,
I never forgot that. And now that I'm more immersed in the menopause care work, I'm like, wow, that's interesting. And I think that's what I want people to be able to do, make those connections. But I'm here to sound the alarm. I'm here to sound the alarm. So before we have something that can be nefarious for us, there are options. We need to do something.
Mm-hmm. And you are doing it with Sœur du Sol. And I want to ask you now, how are you, well, disrupting the norm? How are you getting your information out there and empowering women? So let's transition now and tell us about your business and how the connecting the dots is allowing you now to empower women with these choices to take better care of their body.
So one of the first things that I did as a budding clinical herbalist back in school to become a clinical herbalist and doing my practice is really finding the right combination of herbs
Okay.
and not the usual suspects. So I was fortunate in March of this year and part of April to be hosted by two amazing young doctors at the University of Calavi in Benin. And they set up almost like a sabbatical where every day I was meeting with at least three traditional healers who
Right.
were teaching me about West African herbs. So I was going out with them, doing some foraging, seeing the herbs, tasting them, and hearing firsthand how they use the herbs in their practices. And what was interesting is that every single day, I like to say I was meeting a herb that they have used for millennia to
Wow.
treat menopause.
Wow.
So we talk about science and spirit. So I knew that that was a signpost. So when I came home in April, it was like if a menopause bubble had burst in the United States. I'm like, oh, I see it. There I was learning this. Here I am. And then I started looking at some of my top five herbs because at that time I was doing something else, right?
Okay.
I was consulting and doing some leadership development work. But I really saw that the women that I was working with, we could have done all the leadership development training until the cows came home. If we did not deal with that root issue, which was
Mm-hmm.
the drop in the estrogens, we were doing nothing. So at that point, when I came back in April, that's when I really pivoted and started doing the work with Sœur du Sol. So I formulated, I like to say it's a gift from my ancestors. That's the way
Oh,
I describe it, Steve. It's a gift from my ancestors because again, the researcher in me, I'm making the connections. This does that, this does that, this and this. And we have a proprietary formula of only two herbs. Only two herbs. One of them I can say is lemongrass. The other one will remain unnamed, but has been used for a number of years in Africa, in the Caribbean, and parts of South America to help with women's issues, as even things like postpartum. So,
okay.
so we have developed the tea, and this tea, we are sharing this tea to help women with brain fog. And what is interesting is I've done a little research with about 100 women and the symptom that they're most interested in addressing is brain fog. And the second one is falling asleep and staying asleep.
Yes. Two
And
of the top five issues.
yeah, and they actually wake up in the night because of the hot flushes that they experience in the night. And this herb addresses that. But the one symptom that people have said that they are most scared of is the brain fog. And this
Yes.
helps. And that's what I'm drinking now. This helps, it helps with brain fog. So the Where's My Mind tea is a beautiful loose leaf tea because it's important to have the loose leaf so they can expand and you have more of the leaf. So you get more of the phytochemicals. It's a beautiful loose leaf tea that gently lifts the fog. Gently
Ah,
lifts the fog. It is not a stimulant.
that's lovely. So when you take this tea, How long after can women expect this? Do they have to be drinking this for a number of weeks before it starts getting into their body, or is it instant within the same 24 hours or a few hours of drinking?
It is fast acting,
Okay.
less than 20 minutes.
So it's called losing my mind tea, or
No, weird. Where's my mind?
where's my mind?
Where's my mind tea? And it's available on our website, Sœur du Sol. But I want to say, oh, I should say, and you think about all the things you've done in life, all the good things you've done. I
Yeah.
think this might be one of the best things that I've done.
Ah, Dr. Michelle, I love that. That is so beautiful. And brain fog, going back to that point, because you were an executive position at working in corporate, there is no room for that absent-mindedness and the brain fog. And I will put my hand in my heart and say full-heartedly, this was one of my major symptoms. It was all cognitive. Physical wise, I was doing the right things, the modalities of movement, nutrition, managing stress with meditation and yoga. But it was my mind. And I'm sure many women will attest when they say, okay, I've got early onset dementia. Okay, that's it. I am going to have Alzheimer's by the time I hit 45. That is the journey that we go down. And for us, our cognitive function as high achieving women is that one of the most important tools in the toolbox. Think fast on our feet and pivot, and without trying to even keep up with the patriarchy. That is just one of women's strong traits, is we can think very swiftly, very quickly. So to be empowered to have something, a remedy, a herbal remedy, to give us back that edge is so significant. And my next, well, that was not a question, it was a statement. My question is, this other herb that you can't reveal, is that for fear of it being over cultivated and harvested?
So there are two things. I want to be respectful of where I got this information from.
Okay.
And when I was in Benin, there were things I needed to prove to the traditional healers so that they knew they could trust me. Because one of the things they say is that the last thing that they have not lost to the colonizers is their medicine.
Oh,
So I don't want to run, say, okay, I'm going to run, take this and make millions of dollars. And this is why the women that have taught me about these herbs, they're a part of the business. So they're the ones that are actually harvesting the herbs in Benin.
okay.
The university is doing some of the quality control. So I want to be very respectful of where this came from and in a way protect some of what I feel is like their secrets. But
Right.
the other reason that I'm making it proprietary is that I don't want every Tom, Dick, and Harry to then think that they can trample through my ancestral lands to go forage and find this herb and do all sorts of things with it. So
Mhm.
that's me really being respectful and a little protective of what has been shared with me and how it has been shared with me.
I really admire that need to respect not just the ancestry, but the culture and the lands from which this is being harvested. Tell us a little bit about the name Sœur du Sol. How did you
Uh,
come up with that?
so while I was in Benin, which is Francophone, I had to learn French. So apart from me learning from the traditional healers every day, the university had me working with a research assistant that was teaching me French. And one of the things he said, "You are truly a sister of the soil." And at that moment, I said, "I am." So, as an herbalist, I feel that this work that I'm doing is me as a sister saying to all the women out there that I'm your sister. This is why the tea is called Pour Sœur, which is for sister. So, as a sister of the soil, I developed Porsa for sisters to say, here you are. Here is this beautiful gift
Oh,
from the ancestral lands to empower you to be well, to be well. And you know what the thing is? I really believe that women are so powerful and we have forgotten some of this. So a
Yes.
part of my role is with the remembrance to
Yes.
help them to remember and not feel pressured to do whatever anyone is telling you to do. And let me tell a little quick story. So maybe about 10 years ago, you talked about the brain fog. That was my kryptonite. And went to my doctor, who was an amazing doctor, and was diagnosed with ADD and was put on Adderall.
Okay.
It was the most horrible experience because I felt high. I felt, and I've never used those types of drugs, but I felt high. My speech was quick and erratic. And I saw my coworkers looking at me like, what's up with this one?
So you
So
literally shifted from one end of the one extreme to the other.
absolutely. And I weaned myself off it and actually started taking some herbal remedies, which helped. But in thinking back about what I experienced, I don't want women to have to experience that. And my doctor didn't recognize that it was perimenopause.
Of course. And you spoke about that in wanting to, well, in the points you wanted to share today was misdiagnosis. And I
Mhm.
think this is something that we need to tap into. I'd love to tap into this on our conversation because I have heard this quite often that there's a lack in the medical system. There is a gap. And we now understand that the education system to become a general practitioner in the medical field, it might be a lecture, a module on menopause, very little. I think
Mhm.
one my guests had chalked it down to an hour lecture. Shocking. So why is this misdiagnosis common? And why are we still seeing it prevail, do you feel, in your opinion?
I think just what you said, that based on either the education or miseducation,
Right.
doctors doctors know so much. And this is where people like me, I think, are important. And this is not me being, the self-grandizing, but I think it really is helpful to have complementary practitioners work along with doctors and for doctors to be clear about what they know and to be clear about what they don't know, because you don't have to know everything. And there's some things that you may not know, but there might be people that you can partner with to support you, the people that are in your care, to give those people what they need based on what this woman is requesting, based on what some of the presentations are. So I think there has to be, not I think, I believe that there needs to be more partnerships.
Yes.
I truly believe there needs to be more partnerships with doctors. And of interest, when I was still living in Massachusetts, I had doctors from Children's Hospital referring patients to me to do Reiki.
Beautiful. So
One
cool.
of my favorite patients who passed on was a 6-year-old that had an inoperable brain tumor.
Oh
And
dear.
and her doctor referred her to me for Reiki to help with the pain.
Yes. That was going to be my next question is how do we fill these gaps in the healthcare system? And you've answered it nicely by these partnerships. But that begins with our conventional medicine to be open to practitioners in that field, to be open to the idea that there is so much more. And we're seeing it referrals to naturopaths, we're seeing referrals to chiro, to physio. That's just a start. But there's so much
Yeah.
more in the, let's just say, the spiritual realm. I like to think of it as energy work realm that we could tap into now for the more holistic, the whole, the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual whole person that a woman is.
Yeah. And there is a big part of me that hopes that everyone that is interested in this work can see that there also is a very scientific part of my work. And I think that's the nerd in me, that I want the science, I want the data, I want to understand what are the phytochemicals that are in this? And why is this doing this? And why is this impacting this system? And that is really important. But helping doctors that you partner with to understand that I know this little piece, this portion of the information, and that doesn't make you any less. It just means that this person that you're partnering with can augment the way that you're able to serve your patients. And I think
Yeah.
that is a beautiful thing. That is a
Yes.
beautiful thing. So if wishes were horses and beggars could ride, that would be my wish. That would be my wish.
Yes. We're seeing that yardstick move, but it takes leadership. It takes, let's say, a bit of authority, but initiative certainly on your part to be able to come forth and position yourself as a complementary modality of healing in all modalities, conventional wisdom with ancient wisdom, with West African wisdom. And my next question, though, is one about leadership. Well, more specifically, going back to your background working in the C-suite. I'm first interested to know, when you were still working, were you experiencing the menopause transition at all when you were holding your executive positions as vice president of a university? And yeah, we'll answer that one first because I have a follow-up.
So I would say no. My coworkers might say something else.
Yeah.
I would say no, but I think what I was experiencing more than anything, and I'm also an Enneagram practitioner, what I was experiencing, which may have been outside of the realm of menopause and midlife, was a transition in the way that I showed up.
Okay.
And understanding the Enneagram type that I lead with. Once I delved deep into the Enneagram and I understood how people were experiencing me, I had to shift. Oh my God, I had to shift. So I believe that was less about midlife and more about my own coming into a deep understanding of who I was and how I experienced the world, but also how people were experiencing me.
Aha. Do you think though, I mean, even just to come to that realization that you had to shift, but to come to that realization that you started to observe yourself in the context of your work environment, do you think that perhaps there was an awakening at this phase, this transition in your life, almost as the start of entering into the age of wisdom, as Ayurveda refers to as menopause, that to be able to stop dead in your tracks, observe, okay, I'm an important piece of the puzzle. It's not everybody around me, but it's how I'm showing up in the world today as well. That was maybe an invitation, perhaps, in your
Mm.
perimenopause menopause journey. I don't want to situate the estimate here, but I'm
Um,
intrigued by this.
yeah, so it might have been a both and. So when I had what I would call a really big awakening, at the
Yeah.
same time, I was getting an additional certification as a Kundalini yoga teacher. And that made a big difference. That was just around COVID as well.
Right.
Made a huge, huge difference. And I truly believe it may be a both and. It may be a both and, but I really think it was about me activating, right, those things that were in me. So doing a lot of the body work, doing a lot of the
Mhm.
breath work with Kundalini, and learning to become a teacher and seeing myself from a totally different perspective.
Mm.
Really doing the self-analysis and like, girl, really? You said that? Or you just thought that? Is that really what you just thought? And is
So,
that really how you just behaved? So
yeah.
that was really beyond helpful for me, which is why I understand that 2020 was the beginning of the end for me in my corporate career.
Okay.
So by the time I left New York in 2021 and came to Arizona, that awakening was already happening.
Okay.
And things were just they were just coming into place. At the end of 2022, I was using her products for a long time, but here she was doing this amazing course, and I'm like, you know what? Let me go do it. I never thought that I would then enroll to become a clinical herbalist. All these signposts. So I think the best way I can answer the question is that this was all planned and destined. It all was. It all was. So I even think about my work in the C-suite. I call it an internship. That was my internship.
Interesting. I love your perspective.
It was my internship to then leave because I had to be able to have that vantage point. So
Exactly.
that when I'm working with women that were like me or that are like me in those positions, I understand what they're going through because I've been there.
Yeah. And from your background and leadership position, what do you wish organizations understood about supporting women and women leaders in particular as they go through this transition?
All women leaders and organizations need to be very clear and understand that they bring women into these positions just as they're either perimenopausal or
Mm,
menopausal or postmenopausal.
mhm,
So if we're talking about equity and we're talking about employee centered, there is no way we can be hiring these women and not providing some sort of support. So I would go one step further and say all organizations need to take a close look at their policies because that's where it starts. Take a close look at your policies and think about looking at the organization and getting your data. What percentage of women in your organization are between the ages of 35 and 60? Just get a percentage so that you know who's in the pond. And then you have to prepare the pond. So these women need to have either coaching so that they understand what is happening and they don't blame themselves.
yes.
And organizations also need to do some employee wellness.
Mhm.
Hire people like me.
Yes.
Talk about sleep. There's so many women that are sleep deprived because they think they have to get it done or they're just not able to sleep because of the menopausal stage that they're in.
Mhm, mhm. That's fantastic. I love how you put that. Know who's in the pond and then prepare the pond accordingly. That is so perfectly, perfectly said. I'm very grateful for you, Dr. Michelle, for honoring the sisterhood and honoring the generations of wisdom that has come before you, and not only sharing it, but protecting it from being just over colonized. I find that work that you're doing is so sacred. And so thank you. Thank you on behalf of all the listeners who should be feeling tingly and warm right now, knowing that they too are part of the source, the sisterhood, because this is where we are all first deeply rooted in before we spread our wings and went to different regions of our beautiful planet, Mother Earth. I'm so excited to share this with the listeners. This has been a beautiful conversation and one that I would like to carry on again in the future so we can explore more of the work that you are doing in this field, Dr. Michelle. But please first tell our listeners where they can find you.
You can find me on our website at Sœur du Sol, SOEURDUSOL. I'd love for you to go there and poke around. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Michelle Cromwell. And lastly, I'm starting to dabble on Instagram, so you can find me at the Dr. Michelle.
Love that. That's so fantastic. We'll be sure to share those links in the show notes. If you could give women some parting words of wisdom in this moment, apart from go drink my tea, but What are some strong words of wisdom to support them in their menopause journey, be it whether they're in the workplace, in a leadership position, or just simply the CEO of our homestead?
You have forgotten,
Mm,
but you can remember. And the power that you have forgotten is how to take care of your body, your whole body, your mind, your heart, and your divinity, which is that sacred center. So listen to what your body is asking for and
mm.
find it, because the last thing I'll say is doing nothing to take care of that sacred body is not an option.
That's so true. So true. Dr. Michelle, thank you so much for sharing that with us and being here today on the Menopause Disruptor podcast and disrupting a little bit of the status quo and making us think a little bit beyond just what's in front of us, searching deep within here to know what's right for our healing journey. So thank you again.
My deep true pleasure.
My massage therapist recently told me, Mary, you're in competition with your own podcast when it comes to delivering menopause support in menopause education. And so there I was lying face down, ruminating over her statement. And she's absolutely right. If I'm bringing on all the other experts, why would anyone seek my support and my expertise when they can just go to the websites and the many guests that I have featured on this show? And so I was thinking, what is my specialty? And I realized, wait a second, that is my role. That is my purpose. Over 30 years in communications, of course, I am curating information, unpacking it, and delivering it to my audience. And not only that, I'm a connector, connecting the dots, connecting the information, making it relevant, raw, real, by sharing other people's backstories. Because we're all in this journey together as menopausal women. We're all in this journey as sisters. And I was so grateful that entered into our conversation. Sisterhood, sisters, and Dr. Michelle Cromwell. Wow, I applaud her. I said that to her, and I have to say it again. I applaud her for honoring the ancient wisdom of a culture that dearly protects generations of folklore or generations of knowledge, be it in herbal remedies or in community support of women, sisterhood. So, to enter this arena and tell the stories of my fellow sisters, I feel that that is my purpose. Sharing stories, sharing other people's backstories, and also mine as well. And the more stories that we hear from our sisters, the more we feel a companionship, whether it's in our close proximity or thousands of miles away. We just feel connected. And menopause is that moment in time, that pivotal moment where we have an opportunity to stop and take stock of who we are and question whether we are on the right path, and then autocorrect to find our way back to our soul. So, for a woman to leave a corporate career of over 18 years, that's bold. You have to be really compelled to take a shift and a pivot out of the career trajectory to follow something that's more meaningful. And I think that that in itself is one of my biggest takeaways from this conversation. There was an inner calling, and Dr. Michelle knew it. She was so inspired by her lifelong interest in herbalism and the healing arts that it finally came to the point in her life where she was invited to step in. And since she has, she's never looked back. And we are grateful for that, because what Dr. Michelle does in the field of women's health it's necessary. It's necessary because she closes the gap in some conventional medicine. There's so much talk about MHT or menopause hormone therapy, and it has been subjugated to so much research. And then that research has made it to mainstream that sort of twisted and turned some of the findings. Case in point, the Women's Health Initiative, which was abruptly halted because they found links with breast cancer, stroke, and subsequent studies that have come out after that actually identified that estrogen therapy could, in fact, be supportive for heart health and brain health. And then you've heard in my recent episode with Dr. Elise Fosnight where I address the issues around black box warning labels. And again, women's health and conventional remedies used to relieve some aggravating and at times debilitating symptoms that get in the way of our careers, get in the way of our daily lives, are being subjected to shocking headlines. As Dr. Michelle says, that can render a lot of women dead in their tracks. Analysis paralysis, perhaps, or just feeling, I won't do anything. I can't do anything if I try this. News comes out on it, social media post out on it again saying it's bad. Dr. Michelle helps women to see their power by tapping into their inner wisdom. And then she blends this with cultural heritage of West African herbal medicine, along with something I learned, medical astrology, to bring women tools in their toolbox that they can use to tailor their wellness strategy. I mean, who knew? Planetary placements can indicate tendencies towards inflammation or chronic issues. Incredible. But above all else, Dr. Michelle stresses the importance of doing something rather than nothing and warns us that inaction can actually lead to more chronic health issues later in life. Take agency, advocate for your own health needs, but also take back your autonomy, which means seek evidence-based natural remedies, seek out data, research, and then take that proactive step towards your healing journey. If today's insights resonated with you, I'd love for you to be a part of our growing community of menopause disruptors. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening right now. And if you know someone who can benefit from these conversations, please share this episode. Sometimes a simple act of sharing can be the first step in someone's healing journey. And hey, if you're ready to take the next step in your menopause journey, I'm here to support you. You can find all my services, including my comprehensive menopause intelligence digital course, one-on-one coaching programs, and workplace education services at mlcoaching.com. It's in the show notes. Want to stay connected and get regular doses of menopause wisdom? Follow me on Instagram at Menopause Disruptor Podcast, where I share tips, insights, and real conversations about navigating this transformative phase of life. Let's continue to disrupt this menopause conversation together. Remember, midlife should be the best life, and it will be. Namaste.